Hi, welcome to The One Show with Christine Blakely.
And Adrian Charles, and the woman from Texas who made a name for herself as a Lone Star.
It's Charlene Spiteri.
Oh, I'm loving that cheer.
We've actually got whoops then. We don't often do whoops, do we?
No, whoops are good.
That's because it was entertaining.
You see the Oscars last night? Because you were on the BAFTA panel, so you've seen all these films, presumably, for that.
You know, I saw all the movies apart from... I didn't actually see the Sandra Bullock movie because that wasn't within the BAFTA lot, so I didn't actually see that movie, but I saw everything else. Yeah. But I love Sandra Bullock.
Yeah,
well, Sandra Bullock won an Oscar, didn't she?
Yeah, she did, Best Actress. She looked fabulous.
And she also won a Worst Actress award, something called a Razzie.
Kind of cancelled each other off.
Yeah, it was big enough to accept that, though.
And I thought she did definitely accept it very graciously, because I saw the footage of that and I thought she was pretty cool.
But if you won for your new album, you won a Best Album Award and a Worst Album Award, would you accept both awards?
I've had them all.
Yeah.
You've been doing it as long as that. No, yeah, you've got to, I think it's like anything. If you only read good press about yourself, then you're going to basically have a lot of problems getting through doorways. But you see either read nothing or sort of take it all, balance it all up.
Yeah.
You've got to take the good with the bad.
But can you believe it's 82 years of the Oscars and only now does a woman win Best Director? It's incredible, really, isn't it? She won it for... Catherine Bigelow won it for Hurt Locker. That's a film worth seeing.
Well, I think Hurt Locker's really, really good. I mean, it's a really good movie. I mean, it's a great subject. The way she makes it is really raw, which really deals with, what it's about. And just the sort of numbness of somebody, the way that, dealing with, like, defusing all these bombs and everything. It's a really, really good movie, and the horror that's out there and the reality of it and roughness. So I think she did a really... I mean, I think she definitely deserved to win. She definitely deserved to win Best
I think so
Director, I think, and
Flying
Best Movie.
the British flag, of course. Costume designer Sandy Powell on the right there for the young Victoria, and Ray Beckett, one of the sound editors on the Hurt Locker.
Let's give them a round of applause. Look forward to hearing about the new album of movie music, appropriately enough, later on. But James Bulger's mother, Denise, has given her first TV interview since the story broke that John Venables has been recalled to prison.
The Home Secretary, Jack Straw, has refused to give any further information other than to say the allegations against Venables do not involve attacking or killing anyone.
It is critical that if charges do follow, it is possible to hold a fair trial. Fair for the defence and fair for the prosecution.
We're joined again by legal expert Joshua Rosenberg. Thank you very much, Joshua. Another sort of crazy day again. What do you make of the situation so far?
What's clear is that the police investigations into whatever John Venables is said to have done are still going on. And it's important not to prejudice those investigations. It's important that any witnesses to whatever he's accused of doing won't know that the person known as Mr. We don't know what is really John Venables, because if they know that, that's going to affect their evidence. They may be prejudiced in favour of him, they may be prejudiced against him, and if he is tried on that evidence, he might be able to get his conviction overturned if he's convicted on the basis that he didn't get a fair trial.
But it's fanciful to suppose we can have the trial of a Mr. X or a Mr. whatever he is now without anyone knowing about it, unless you put reported restrictions on it and say you can't report that this might be John Venables.
I think that was the intention of the authorities last week. I think they thought that they would have a young man in his late 20s accused of whatever it is on trial, and we wouldn't know that that was John Venables and he would get a fair trial. Now, I don't think that's possible now, but I think that's what the authorities were aiming for.
And where do you think Denise, Jane Bulger's mother, sits with this? Obviously, she wants to be involved with what happens now. How is that going to work out for her? And obviously, she spoke very passionately about that today on the TV.
Everybody has tremendous sympathy with her. I mean, what she went through is unimaginable. But she is not the victim of whatever crime John Venables is accused of now. Any prosecution is brought by the state. It's not brought by Denise Fergus. She doesn't have a right to get involved. Obviously, she wants to know and she will be told what's happening, but she's not going to be told independently of us, the public, and she is not the victim of whatever he is accused of doing.
Charlene, where do you stand on this? You understand, presumably, the need for anonymity.
Yeah, of course, but I mean, the thing is she's a victim of John Venables. That's the thing, and obviously, I mean, as far as like her grief is, she must live with it every day. I think she's in a very, very difficult position because at the end of the day, she probably feels that he should never have been out in the first place, which, to be honest, is absolutely how I think most people feel in the public. Is we just feel that that they shouldn't have been out for the crime they committed and for the short amount of time that apparently they were rehabilitated.
But there's a saying, isn't there, in law, that bad cases don't make good law, and you've got to kind of just stick with the rules.
You've got to stick with the rules. He is not being brought back to prison because of the original charge. He served the period that the courts decided in the hope that he was going to be rehabilitated if he didn't go into an adult prison. And what we're now thinking he's charged with, or going to be charged with, is something completely different.
OK, Joshua, thanks very much indeed for your time again.
The development of Braille 170 years ago allowed a fundamental freedom to thousands of blind and partially sighted people.
But the teaching of Braille is severely on the decline, something which alarms BBC Radio 4's Peter White, whose life simply wouldn't have been the same without it.
Ask any blind or partially sighted person what they miss most, and the majority will say the ability to read and write.
Yes, have you got the new Andrew Rawls?
They're just two of the basic pleasures that sighted people take for granted. If you're blind, though, it's easy to miss out on the latest bestsellers.
We're not helped by the fact that 95% of published books like this one never find their way into Braille. Not long ago, that would have meant that blind people missed out on a great deal of literature.
Now, though, it doesn't have to be like that.
Susan loved to listen to pipes.
Children here at the Royal Blind School in Edinburgh begin learning Braille when they're 5, but not everyone gets that chance.
These days, there's a huge range of assistive technology around. Everything from simple talking books to very complex talking computers which can read text. Great news for youngsters like these and many other people. But there is a downside. Some people think that with this increased concentration on high tech, Braille is becoming redundant.
Each Braille letter is made up of a combination of 1 to 6 raised dots arranged in 2 rows. The 2 rows together are called a cell. To read it, simply touch the cells to work out what's written.
It says, "I am really excited at being on the One Show." Sad, tell me about your experience of Braille.
Well, I started learning it in nursery. Basically, like a normal sighted person would, learn to read print. For things like maths, I find it much easier if I can feel the layout of where the numbers are, and, well, it's easier to get into my head, basically.
Stephen Clegg can see a little now, but the disease he has means his eyesight is deteriorating very quickly.
It's quite hard sometimes because it's like learning English all over again.
The UK's most famous Braille user is David Blunkett. He became one of the most powerful men in British politics. But if it hadn't been for Braille, his career would have been very different.
It opened up opportunities that others took for granted for jobs when people said, well, your options are going to be very limited. Being pig-headed, I said my options are not going to be limited and I'll use Braille. And I think without Braille it would have been very difficult indeed to have risen to the cabinet and to have done the difficult jobs I did over those 8 years.
Here in Edinburgh you can be taught Braille, but in David Blunkett's hometown of Sheffield, recent cuts mean there are no opportunities for adults to learn. It's a similar story across the country, even though Braille is such an essential tool to help with daily living.
I think if we suggested, that sighted people, they could throw away their pens and not learn joined-up writing anymore, I think people would probably send me away somewhere where I could have a good long lie down. I was registered as blind back in 1964. I read Braille more now than I did then. A word search in a magazine, playing cards, playing Scrabble, singing hymns in a church. There are just dozens of things in everyday life that would be not impossible, but really, really much harder than they need to be if you didn't have Braille.
I bought this book this morning in a bookshop down
New technology may discourage the teaching and learning of Braille, but it can also have a positive effect on our lives.
I'll take a quick picture of the book
Camera started.
It should read out to me.
Tony Blair was sprawled on the sofa in his small office.
Not only will this software quickly convert text into the spoken word, but it'll change it into braille.